Elena Carter's world shattered when she uncovered a betrayal that threatened her family's legacy. Framed for a crime she didn't commit, the 28-year-old architect faced a choice: surrender to the lies or fight for justice. With the clock ticking and her reputation on the line, one shocking discovery would change everything. There is one detail that only the attentive notice. Did you see it? Write in the comments and click subscribe, because it will be even cooler. Elena Carter stood in the sleek conference room of Pinnacle Designs, her heart pounding as the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The 28-year-old architect had poured her soul into this firm, her designs earning praise across Seattle's competitive skyline. But today, the air felt thick with tension, and the polished mahogany table reflected her anxious expression like a mirror. Her boss, Victor Grayson, a man with a smile as sharp as a blade, leaned back in his chair, his eyes glinting with something Elena couldn't quite place. "Elena," Victor began, his voice smooth but laced with an edge, "we've uncovered discrepancies in the waterfront project budget. Significant funds are missing, and the trail leads back to you." The words hit like a freight train. Elena's breath caught, her fingers tightening around the edge of her portfolio. "That's impossible," she stammered, her mind racing. The waterfront project was her breakthrough, a sprawling eco-friendly complex that had put Pinnacle Designs on the map. She'd overseen every detail, from the blueprints to the community outreach, working late nights to ensure its success. Missing funds? The accusation was absurd. Victor slid a stack of documents across the table, his expression unreadable. "Bank records don't lie, Elena. Transfers from the project account to an offshore account in your name. Over $200,000. Elena's hands trembled as she scanned the papers. The transactions were there in black and white, dates, amounts, and her name as the recipient. But she'd never seen these accounts, never authorized a single transfer. "This isn't me," she said, her voice rising. "Someone set me up." Victor raised an eyebrow, his skepticism cutting deeper than any words. "Set you up? That's a bold claim. The board is already discussing termination, and the authorities are involved. I suggest you get your story straight." The room spun. Termination? Authorities? Elena's dreams of leading Pinnacle's next big project, of cementing her legacy in Seattle's architectural scene, were crumbling before her eyes. She thought of her family's small vineyard in Napa Valley, where her parents, Maria and Daniel Carter, had toiled for decades to keep their land afloat. She'd been sending them money from her bonuses to help with repairs, but now, with her job and reputation on the line, that support would vanish. As she left the office, the Seattle rain soaked her coat, mirroring the storm brewing inside her. She replayed Victor's words, the cold dismissal in his tone. Someone had orchestrated this, someone with access to the project's finances and enough motive to pin it on her. But who? Her colleague, Nathan Pierce, flashed in her mind. The 35-year-old senior architect had always resented her rapid rise, his snide comments about her lucky breaks barely concealed. Could he be behind this? Back in her apartment, Elena pored over the documents Victor had given her, her coffee growing cold. The offshore account was a dead end, registered in her name but inaccessible without a password she didn't have. She called her friend Lila, a cybersecurity analyst, hoping for a miracle. "Lila, I need you to dig into this account," Elena pleaded, emailing her the details. "Someone's framing me, and I'm running out of time." Lila's voice was calm but firm. "I'll do what I can, but offshore accounts are tricky. If this is a setup, they've covered their tracks well. Give me a couple of days." Days? Elena didn't have days. The board meeting was in 48 hours, and if she couldn't prove her innocence, she'd lose everything, her job, her savings, maybe even her freedom. That night, sleep eluded her, her mind tangled in a web of betrayal and doubt. She thought of her parents, who'd always believed in her, and the vineyard they'd fought to preserve. She couldn't let them down. The next morning, Elena visited Pinnacle's HR department, requesting access to the project's financial logs. The clerk, a nervous young woman named Sophie, hesitated. I'm not supposed to share those without Victor's approval, she said, glancing around. Please, Sophie, Elena urged, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. My career is on the line. I just need to see who accessed the accounts. Sophie bit her lip, then slid a USB drive across the counter. This has the logs from the last 6 months. Don't tell anyone I gave it to you. Elena's heart leaped. The logs were a lifeline, a chance to trace the real culprit. Back home, she plugged the drive into her laptop, her pulse racing as she scrolled through the data. Most entries were routine, vendor payments, contractor invoices, but one caught her eye, a series of late-night logins from an IP address she didn't recognize, all tied to Nathan's user ID. Her stomach twisted. Nathan had been accessing the accounts after hours, but why? Was he the one funneling money to frame her? Before she could dig deeper, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging, Elena. You won't like what you find. Her blood ran cold. Someone was watching her, someone who knew she was getting close. The message wasn't just a warning, it was proof she was on the right track. But who sent it? Nathan? Victor? Or someone else entirely? Elena's apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, every shadow hiding a threat. She double-checked her locks, her mind racing with questions. If Nathan was behind this, what was his endgame? And if he wasn't, who else stood to gain from her downfall? As she stared at the cryptic text, Elena's resolve hardened. She wasn't just fighting for her job anymore, she was fighting for her life. The logs were a start, but she needed more. Lila's investigation, Sophie's risky help, and her own determination were all she had. The board meeting loomed, and with it, the chance to clear her name or lose everything. But one thing was certain, whoever was behind this had underestimated Elena Carter, and she was ready to turn the tables. The Seattle skyline glittered through Elena Carter's apartment window, but the beauty felt mocking as she sat hunched over her laptop, the USB drive's financial logs glowing on the screen. The cryptic text, "Stop digging, Elena. You won't like what you find," still burned in her mind, each word a taunt from an unseen enemy. The 28-year-old architect's hands trembled, not from fear but from a growing fury. Someone had framed her for embezzling $200,000 from Pinnacle Design's waterfront project, and the board meeting to decide her fate was tomorrow. Time was slipping away, but Elena was no longer the trusting idealist who'd walked into that conference room yesterday. She was a fighter, and she'd prove her innocence, no matter the cost. The logs from Sophie, the HR clerk, were damning. Late-night logins tied to Nathan Pierce's user ID, each one aligning with the dates of the fraudulent transfers to the offshore account and Elena's name. Nathan, with his polished suits and thinly veiled jealousy, had always seemed ambitious, but this? Stealing funds and pinning it on her was a new low. Yet the anonymous text gnawed at her. If Nathan was behind this, why warn her? Was he toying with her, or was there a bigger player pulling the strings? Elena's phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Lila, her cybersecurity friend. "I've got something," Lila said, her voice tense. The offshore account was created 3 months ago, right when the waterfront project hit its funding peak. The email tied to it is a dummy address, but I traced the IP used to set it up. It's from a coffee shop near Pinnacle's office. Someone was sloppy. A coffee shop? Elena's mind raced. Nathan often worked from cafes, boasting about his creative process. Could it be that simple? Can you get a name or a device ID? Not yet, Lila replied. But I'm cross-referencing the IP with public Wi-Fi logs. It'll take time, maybe too much for your board meeting. Elena, whoever did this knows what they're doing. Be careful. Careful wasn't an option anymore. Elena thanked Lila and turned back to the logs, her eyes scanning for anything she'd missed. Then she saw it, a secondary approval on one of the transfers, signed off by Victor Grayson himself. Her heart sank. Victor, her mentor, the man who'd praised her designs and promised her a future at Pinnacle, had authorized a transfer to the account framing her. Was he in on it? The thought twisted like a knife, but it made sense. Victor had access to everything, accounts, approvals, even her personnel file. If he was involved, Nathan might just be a pawn. Elena needed answers, but confronting Victor directly was too risky. Instead, she texted Sophie, asking to meet at a quiet diner across town. Sophie arrived, her eyes darting nervously as she slid into the booth. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered, clutching her coffee mug. "If Victor finds out I gave you those logs, I'm done." "I know, and I'm grateful," Elena said, leaning forward. "But I need to know about Victor. Did he ever mention the waterfront project's finances? Anything unusual?" Sophie hesitated, then nodded. "A few weeks ago, he asked me to pull the project's budget records but told me not to log the request. I thought it was weird, but he's the boss. Then I overheard him on a call, talking about securing the funds and keeping it quiet. I didn't think much of it until now." Elena's pulse quickened. Victor was hiding something, and Sophie's story confirmed her suspicions. But why frame her? She was a rising star, not a threat, at least, she hadn't thought so. "Did Nathan ever access those records?" she pressed. Sophie frowned. "Not that I know of, but Nathan's been cozying up to Victor lately. They'd had closed-door meetings, and Nathan's been smug, like he's got a secret. I just assumed it was a promotion." Elena's mind churned. Nathan and Victor working together? It was possible, but the pieces didn't fully fit. Nathan's logins, Victor's approvals, the anonymous text, it was a puzzle with too many edges. She thanked Sophie, who hurried out, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and a cold cup of coffee. The diner's neon sign buzzed, mirroring the static in her head. She was close, but every step forward felt like walking into a trap. Back home, Elena decided to take a risk. She emailed Nathan, keeping her tone neutral. "Can we talk about the waterfront project? I found something in the logs that doesn't add up." She hit send, her stomach nodding. If Nathan was guilty, he'd either ignore her or try to cover his tracks. If he wasn't, he might let something slip. Either way, she'd gauge his reaction. To her surprise, Nathan replied within minutes, "Meet me at the office, 8 p.m. We'll clear this up." The message was curt, almost too casual. Elena's instincts screamed caution, but she couldn't back down. She texted Lila the meeting details, asking her to check in later, just in case. Then she grabbed her coat and headed out, the Seattle night wrapping around her like a shroud. Pinnacle's office was eerily quiet after hours, the glass walls reflecting her silhouette as she stepped off the elevator. Nathan was waiting in the conference room, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "You're making waves, Elena," he said, his voice low. "Those logs you're poking around in? They're not what you think." "Then explain them," Elena shot back, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "Your user IDs all over the transfers that framed me. If you're not involved, why were you accessing the accounts at midnight?" Nathan's jaw tightened, and for a moment, she thought he'd lash out. Instead, he leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I was digging, same as you. Victor's been acting strange, secret meetings, encrypted files. I thought he was skimming funds, so I checked the accounts. But I didn't transfer anything, Elena. Someone used my ID to make it look like I did." Her heart skipped. Was Nathan telling the truth, or was this a deflection? Before she could respond, the lights flickered, and a shadow moved in the hallway. Someone else was here. Elena's breath caught as Nathan's eyes widened, his bravado faltering. "Did you come alone?" he whispered. She nodded, her pulse hammering. The shadow vanished, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. Nathan grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. "We need to get out of here. Now." As they hurried toward the elevator, Elena's mind raced. If Nathan was innocent, then Victor was the mastermind, but who sent the text? And who was in the office with them? The elevator doors slid shut, but the sinking feeling in her gut told her the real danger was just beginning. Tomorrow's board meeting was her last chance, and with every ally questionable and every shadow a threat, Elena knew she was running out of moves. Elena Carter's heart thundered as the elevator descended from Pinnacle Design's office, the hum of the machinery barely drowning out the tension between her and Nathan Pierce. The shadow in the hallway had vanished, but its presence lingered like a ghost, a reminder that someone was watching, someone who wanted her silenced. Nathan's grip on her arm loosened as the doors opened to the lobby, his face pale under the fluorescent lights. "We're not safe here," he muttered, glancing over his shoulder. Elena nodded, her mind a whirlwind of doubt. Was Nathan an ally, a liar, or something worse? The 28-year-old architect had no time to decide, not with the board meeting looming in mere hours, where she'd face accusations of embezzling $200,000 from the waterfront project. Outside, the Seattle rain pelted them, the city's glow blurred by the downpour. Elena pulled her coat tighter, her thoughts racing. Nathan's claim that someone used his user ID to frame them both was plausible, but his late-night logins and cozy meetings with Victor Grayson, her boss, painted a murkier picture. And then there was Victor, his signature on the fraudulent transfer, his secretive behavior. Was he the puppeteer, or was there a larger scheme at play? The anonymous text, "Stop digging, Elena. You won't like what you find," echoed in her mind, a warning she couldn't ignore. "We need to talk somewhere secure," Elena said, her voice cutting through the rain. "If you're telling the truth, Nathan, help me prove it. The logs show your ID, Victor's approvals, and an offshore account in my name. Someone's playing us all." Nathan hesitated, then nodded. "There's a 24-hour diner 2 blocks away. No cameras, no crowds. We can figure this out there." His eyes darted to the street, as if expecting the shadow to reappear. Elena agreed, but her guard stayed up. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. The diner was a relic, its neon sign flickering and booths smelling faintly of grease. They slid into a corner table, the waitress barely glancing at them as she poured coffee. Elena pulled out her phone, showing Nathan a screenshot of the logs. "These are your logins," she said, her tone sharp. "If you were investigating Victor, why didn't you report it? Why let it escalate to this?" Nathan ran a hand through his damp hair, his jaw tight. "I didn't have proof. Victor's smart, he covers his tracks. I thought I could catch him slipping, but then the transfer started, and my ID was compromised. I didn't know about the offshore account until you mentioned it. Elena, I'm not the enemy here." His words sounded sincere, but Elena's instinct screamed caution. She leaned forward, her voice low. "Then who is? Victor? Someone higher up? And who was in the office just now?" Before Nathan could answer, her phone buzzed with a call from Lila, her cybersecurity friend. Elena stepped outside, the rain soaking her again as she answered. "Elena, I've got something big," Lila said, her voice urgent. "The coffee shop IP traced to a device registered to Pinnacle Designs, but it's not Nathan's or Victor's. It's tied to Claudia Reyes, the CFO. She's been off the radar, working remotely, but her digital footprint's all over that offshore account. She set it up, Elena, and she's been funneling money to a shell company tied to a rival firm." Elena's breath caught. Claudia, the elusive CFO who'd mentored her early on, was behind this? The woman who'd seemed so supportive, always praising Elena's potential? It was a betrayal that cut deeper than Victor's cold dismissal. "Why frame me?" Elena asked, her voice trembling. "Money," Lila said bluntly. "The rival firm's been trying to sabotage Pinnacle's projects. Claudia's been skimming funds, and you were the perfect scapegoat, young, ambitious, easy to discredit. But there's more. I found encrypted emails between Claudia and Victor. He's not the mastermind, but he's complicit. He approved the transfers to protect his own interests." Elena's mind reeled. Victor was involved, but Claudia was the architect of her downfall. And Nathan? Was he truly a victim, or was he playing a role? She thanked Lila and hung up, her resolve hardening. The board meeting was her chance to expose them all, but she needed hard evidence, something undeniable. Back inside, Nathan was fidgeting, his coffee untouched. "What did your friend say?" he asked, his tone too eager. Elena studied him, searching for a tell. "She's digging deeper," she lied, keeping Claudia's name to herself. "But we need more than logs. If Victor's involved, there's got to be a paper trail, emails, contracts, something." Nathan nodded, but his eyes flickered with unease. "I might know where to look," he said. "Victor keeps a private server for sensitive files. I've seen him access it from his office. If we can get in there." "Break into his office?" Elena cut in, her stomach twisting. It was illegal, a line she'd sworn never to cross. But the alternative, losing everything to a lie, was worse. She thought of her parents' vineyard, the Napa Valley sunsets they'd fought to preserve. She couldn't let Claudia and Victor destroy her family's dreams along with her own. "It's not breaking in if I have a key," Nathan said, pulling a fob from his pocket. "Senior architects get access. We go in, download the files, and get out. But it has to be tonight, before the board meeting." Elena's pulse raced. It was a gamble, but the server could hold the proof she needed: emails, financial records, maybe even Claudia's connection to the rival firm. "Fine," she said, her voice steady. "But if you're lying, Nathan, I'll bury you myself." They returned to Pinnacle's office at midnight, the building a dark monolith against the stormy sky. Nathan's key fob worked, and they slipped into Victor's office, the scent of leather and cologne heavy in the air. Elena's flashlight beam danced across the desk as Nathan booted up the computer, bypassing the login with a code he claimed Victor had shared carelessly. Her unease grew. Nathan knew too much, moved too confidently. Was this a setup? The server files were encrypted, but Nathan navigated them with ease, pulling up a folder labeled Waterfront Contingency. Inside were emails between Victor and Claudia, detailing the shell company and the rival firm's payments. Elena's heart leaped. Here was the proof. But as she downloaded the files to a USB drive, a noise echoed from the hallway. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. Nathan froze, his face ashen. "Someone's here," he whispered. Elena's mind flashed to the shadow from earlier. Was it Claudia, Victor, or someone else? The footsteps grew closer, and Elena's eyes darted to the USB drive, still downloading. 10 seconds left. She grabbed Nathan's arm, pulling him toward the closet. They slipped inside, the door clicking shut as the office door creaked open. Through the closet slats, Elena saw a figure enter, their face obscured by shadow. The figure moved to the computer, typing rapidly. The USB drive beeped, the download complete, but the sound was deafening in the silence. The figure paused, their head turning toward the closet. Elena held her breath, her hand clutching the drive. If they were caught now, everything was over. Elena Carter's breath caught in her throat as she crouched in the closet of Victor Grayson's office, the USB drive clutched in her sweating palm. The faint beep of the completed download seemed to echo like a gunshot in the suffocating silence. Through the slats of the closet door, she watched the shadowed figure at the computer pause, their head tilting as if sensing her presence. Nathan Pierce, pressed against her in the cramped space, was rigid, his eyes wide with panic. The figure, a woman, Elena realized, from the silhouette, stepped closer to the closet, her heels clicking ominously on the hardwood floor. Elena's heart pounded so loudly she feared it would betray them. One wrong move, and the proof of her innocence, now stored on the USB drive, would be lost, along with her future. The woman stopped inches from the closet, her hand hovering over the handle. Elena's mind raced. Was it Claudia Reyes, the CFO orchestrating the embezzlement scheme? Or someone else entirely? The anonymous text, "Stop digging, Elena. You won't like what you find," flashed in her memory, a warning that now felt like a prophecy. Just as the handle began to turn, a phone buzzed, sharp and insistent. The woman cursed under her breath, stepping back to answer it. "What is it?" she snapped, her voice low but unmistakable. "Claudia." "No, I'm handling it. The files are secure." Elena's stomach twisted. Claudia was here, erasing evidence, just as she and Nathan had suspected. The USB drive in her hand held emails linking Claudia to a rival firm, proof she'd framed Elena for stealing $200,000 from the waterfront project. But Nathan's involvement still gnawed at her. His access to Victor's server, his convenient key, his claim of being framed, it was all too neat. Was he truly a victim, or was he leading her into a trap? Claudia's call ended, and she returned to the computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Deleting everything, she muttered, oblivious to the intruder's mere feet away. Elena's pulse surged. If Claudia wiped the server, the USB drive would be their only evidence, and Claudia's presence confirmed its value. The woman finished, shut down the computer, and left, her footsteps fading down the hall. Elena waited, counting to 10, before easing the closet door open. The office was empty, but the air felt charged, as if Claudia's malice lingered. "We need to move," Elena whispered, slipping the USB drive into her pocket. Nathan nodded, his face slick with sweat. They crept out of the office, the building's silence now oppressive, every creak a potential threat. In the elevator, Elena studied Nathan, her voice low. "You knew exactly where to find those files." "If you're playing me, Nathan, I swear." "I'm not," he cut in, his voice strained. "I've been watching Victor for weeks. He's sloppy with his passwords." "But Claudia? I didn't know she was this deep." "We've got what we need, Elena. Let's get out of here." They reached the lobby, the Seattle rain still hammering outside, and slipped into the night. Elena's apartment was their next stop. She needed to back up the files before anything else went wrong. But as they drove, her phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. "You're out of your depth. Give up, or it's not just your job you'll lose." Her blood ran cold. Claudia knew they'd been in the office. How? Had she seen them? Or was someone else feeding her information? At her apartment, Elena uploaded the files to a secure cloud server Lila had set up, her hands shaking as she worked. The emails were damning, Claudia coordinating with a rival firm, Victor approving transfers to cover his own financial troubles, and a plan to pin it all on Elena, the overambitious newbie who'd be easy to discredit. But one email stopped her cold, a mention of a silent partner at Pinnacle, someone unnamed but powerful, pulling strings behind the scenes. Who was it? The board chair? A client? The uncertainty gnawed at her. Nathan paced, his agitation growing. "We take this to the board tomorrow," he said. "Show them everything, Claudia's emails, the shell company, all of it. They'll have to listen." Elena nodded, but her trust in Nathan wavered. His eagerness felt off, like he was pushing too hard. "We'll go together," she said, her tone firm. "But I'm keeping the originals. No offense, Nathan, but I don't know who to trust anymore." He flinched, but didn't argue. "Fair enough. Just watch your back. Claudia's not going to let this slide." Sleep was impossible that night. Elena sat by her window, the USB drive on a chain around her neck, her mind replaying every detail. She thought of her parents' vineyard in Napa Valley, the rows of grapes they'd tended through droughts and debt. She'd sent them money to keep it afloat, but if she lost her job, or worse, faced jail time, they'd lose everything. The stakes were higher than ever, and the board meeting at 9 a.m. was her last chance to expose the truth. Morning came too soon, the Seattle sky gray and unforgiving. Elena dressed in her sharpest blazer, the USB drive hidden in her pocket, and met Nathan outside Pinnacle's office. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a nervous energy that set her on edge. "Ready?" he asked, his voice tight. "As I'll ever be," she replied, her resolve steeling. They entered the conference room, where the board sat in a semicircle, their faces a mix of skepticism and impatience. Victor was there, his smile as polished as ever, but Claudia's absence was glaring. "Where's Ms. Reyes?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "Working remotely," Victor said smoothly. "She'll join via video if needed. Now, Miss Carter, you've been given this chance to explain yourself. I hope you've prepared something substantial." Elena's jaw tightened. Victor's condescension was a slap, but she was ready. She plugged the USB drive into the projector, pulling up the emails. "I'm not here to explain," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "I'm here to prove my innocence and expose the real criminals." The board leaned forward as the first email appeared, detailing Claudia's scheme. Gasps rippled through the room, but Victor's face darkened, his composure cracking. "That's fabricated," he snapped, standing. "You're desperate, Elena, and it's pathetic." "Is it?" she countered, clicking to the next email, Victor's own approval of the fraudulent transfer. The board erupted in murmurs, and Victor's eyes widened, his control slipping. Nathan shifted beside her, silent but tense, as if bracing for impact. Then the door burst open, and Claudia stormed in, her face a mask of fury. "Enough of this," she shouted, pointing at Elena. "She's lying. Those emails are fake, and I can prove it." Elena's heart sank. Claudia's sudden appearance, her confidence, it was a trap. Had Nathan tipped her off? Or was the silent partner making their move? The room spun, but Elena held her ground, the USB drive her lifeline. She had one shot to turn this around, and she wasn't backing down. Elena Carter stood firm in the Pinnacle Designs conference room, the weight of Claudia Reyes' accusation hanging like a guillotine. The CFO's sudden entrance, her voice dripping with venom as she branded Elena a liar, sent a chill through the board members' murmurs. The USB drive's emails, proof of Claudia's embezzlement scheme and Victor Grayson's complicity, glowed on the projector screen, but Claudia's confidence was unnerving. "Those files are fabricated," she declared, her eyes locked on Elena. "She's desperate to save herself and dragging us all down with her." The 28-year-old architect's pulse raced, but she refused to flinch. This was her moment, her last chance to clear her name and protect her family's Napa Valley vineyard from the fallout of a $200,000 fraud pinned on her. Victor, his face flushed with barely contained rage, nodded in agreement. "This is a stunt, nothing more. Miss Carter, you've overstepped." His voice was a blade, but Elena caught the flicker of fear in his eyes. The board, however, was wavering, their skeptical glances shifting between her and the incriminating emails. Nathan Pierce, standing beside her, was silent, his tension palpable. Had he betrayed her, tipping Claudia off? Or was the mysterious silent partner mentioned in the emails orchestrating this counterattack? Elena's mind raced, but her resolve was ironclad. She'd come too far to let them bury the truth. "Fabricated?" Elena said, her voice steady, cutting through the chaos. "Then explain why these emails, pulled from Victor's private server, match bank records and IP traces to a coffee shop where Claudia set up the offshore account in my name." She clicked to a new slide, showing Lila's cybersecurity report, detailing the IP link to Claudia's device. The board leaned forward, their murmurs growing louder. Claudia's composure cracked, her lips tightening as she shot a glance at Victor, who looked ready to bolt. "You have no proof I was at that coffee shop," Claudia snapped, but her voice wavered. "This is a setup, and Nathan's in on it. He's been feeding her lies." Elena's heart skipped. Claudia's pivot to Nathan was a desperate move, but it sowed doubt. She glanced at Nathan, whose face was ashen, his hands clenched. "I'm not the one lying," he said, his voice low but firm. "I accessed the accounts because I suspected Victor was skimming. But Claudia's the one who framed Elena and me to cover her tracks for the rival firm." The board chair, a stern woman named Margaret Holt, raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough. Miss Carter, Mr. Pierce, these are serious allegations. If these emails are authentic, we'll need verification. Ms. Reyes, Mr. Grayson, You'll remain here until we investigate. Claudia's eyes widened, her poise unraveling. You can't seriously believe her, she protested, but Margaret's glare shut her down. Elena seized the moment, pulling out her phone to play a voicemail Lila had sent that morning, a recorded call from a whistleblower at the rival firm, confirming Claudia's payments. This is real, Elena said, her voice ringing with conviction. Claudia sold out Pinnacle to line her pockets, and Victor helped her cover it up. I was just the scapegoat. The room erupted, board members demanding answers as Victor slumped in his chair, his defiance crumbling. Claudia lunged for the projector, trying to unplug it, but security, summoned by Margaret, restrained her. This isn't over, Claudia hissed, her eyes burning into Elena. But the tide had turned. Margaret ordered an immediate audit of the waterfront project's finances and a forensic analysis of the server files, with Elena's USB drive as the cornerstone. As the meeting adjourned, Elena's legs nearly buckled, the adrenaline draining from her. Nathan lingered, his expression conflicted. I'm sorry I didn't come clean sooner, he said quietly. I was scared, Elena. But you were right to push. She nodded, still wary but sensing his sincerity. Trust could wait, justice couldn't. In the weeks that followed, the truth unraveled like a tapestry. The audit confirmed the emails, tracing the stolen funds to Claudia's shell company. Victor, facing exposure, confessed to approving the transfers under Claudia's pressure, hoping to save his own failing investments. Both were fired, and the authorities charged them with fraud and embezzlement. The silent partner remained a mystery, but the rival firm's whistleblower provided enough to sink Claudia's scheme. Pinnacle's board, chastened, offered Elena her job back with a promotion, but she declined. She'd seen the firm's underbelly and wanted no part of it. Instead, Elena started her own design studio, focusing on sustainable projects like the waterfront. Her first client? Her parents' vineyard, which she helped rebrand, turning it into a thriving ecotourism destination. The money she'd once sent to keep it afloat now funded her own dreams, and her parents, Maria and Daniel, beamed with pride at her resilience. You fought for what's right, her mother said, tears in her eyes. That's our girl. Claudia and Victor faced their reckoning in court, their reputations in tatters. Nathan, cleared of wrongdoing, left Pinnacle to teach architecture, a quieter life that suited his newfound humility. Elena never heard from the anonymous texter again, but she kept the messages, a reminder of how close she'd come to losing everything. The vineyard sunsets, once a symbol of struggle, now felt like victory, each one a testament to her strength. Elena's story wasn't just about clearing her name, it was about standing up to betrayal, wielding truth as her weapon, and rebuilding on her own terms. She'd faced the storm and emerged stronger, a beacon for anyone fighting injustice. As she walked through the vineyard, the Napa Valley breeze cool against her skin, Elena knew she'd earned her peace, and no one could take that away.